Hi folks, so today before you look at your individualized rubric scores and comments from your teacher, we're really quickly going to go over the common errors we saw in a lot of students' paragraphs. We're going to go through this each part of the paragraph at a time. So up first, just to review, remember your topic sentence comes first. This is the main idea or argument of your body paragraph. It explains a reason for the argument, and then I would say most importantly, it has to respond to the prompt, right? The question you're being asked. These were the most common errors we saw. So the prompt for this paragraph asked you to state how the author used simile to create an emotion in the story. So the most common errors we saw were students not mentioning an emotion word or not using the word simile. Another error we saw a lot was that people were not including the title of the text and the author. That's something you always want to include in a topic sentence. So for example, what this might look like is a lot of students right now have topic sentences that look like the original here. In the short story 11 by Sandra Cisneros, it is clear Rachel wants the day to be over because she is not having a good day. So wanting the day to be over is not an emotion, right? That might be what she was thinking or how she was feeling, but that is not a specific emotion. It does not include an emotion word, and it also doesn't mention similes at all. A revised, improved version of that topic sentence would be in the short story 11 by Sandra Cisneros. The simile at the end of the story clearly demonstrates an emotion of hopelessness. So there we see it identifies the emotion of hopelessness, and it explains that the simile at the end of the story demonstrates this. Up next, in your paragraph, you have context. Remember, your context is a summary of the plot, so your readers can understand your evidence and understand what you're saying in your paragraph, even if they haven't read the story you're talking about. The most common errors we saw in regards to context were, first of all, sometimes context was just incorrect. So a student would say that a quote was from the beginning of the story when really it was at the end. So that's an example of context just being wrong. Sometimes students included too much summary of the text, so their context would include way too much information. The other side of that was that sometimes student wouldn't provide information that was sufficient to help the person reading your paragraph understand the quote. So here's an example of what that last one might look like because we saw that mistake quite a bit. So for example, a lot of people wrote context that sounds like this. In the beginning of the story, Rachel says, people do not feel their age. So this is true, this context is correct, but it doesn't include any information to help me understand really what's going on in the evidence and how it's going to be connected to the evidence. So for example, a revised version would sound like, in the beginning of the story, it is Rachel's birthday, and she explains how people do not automatically feel their age and the conflict it can cause. So this identifies the overall situation, it's Rachel's birthday, and it creates a connection between the situation and the simile, right? That people do not always feel their age. After your context, you have your evidence. That's where you introduce a quote from the text that supports your topic sentence, and it also includes a citation afterwards. So you see here in the example, Rachel explains, blah, blah, blah. You have your quote, and then you have your citation at the end. All right, so the biggest and kind of most significant error we saw here was that some students selected evidence that did not include a simile. If you selected evidence that did not include a simile, you're going to have to find a simile from the story, right, to use for your evidence. You can use our previous worksheet for that, and you're really going to have to redo most of your paragraph. Some other errors we saw were that a few students used a simile in their paragraph. That was the example we used in class. Some students were missing a citation, so that's the place where you have the author's last name and the page number. Other folks were missing the quote lead-in, so that's the part at the beginning that says, like, Rachel says. So here's just a short example, right, where you see in the original, right, there's a citation missing. In the revised one, we have a citation. Up next is your analysis. This is really the most important part of your paragraph, right? This is the meat of our paragraph burger. So remember, your analysis should always be 2 sentences. The first sentence of your analysis, you really want to describe what the quote means. So you're looking at keywords in the quote. The second sentence of your analysis is where you really want to explain how your quote proves your topic sentence is true. So this is something a lot of students struggled with because analysis is difficult. These were some of the common errors. A lot of students did not mention the use of simile or the emotion word that their paragraph is about at all, right? So your analysis should be all about, right, how the simile demonstrates the emotion you are writing about. Another mistake we noticed was that some people wrote analysis that was just summary of the plot, right? They were just saying what happened in the story rather than explaining how the simile showed the emotion. And the third mistake, and I think this one was really the one we saw the most frequently, was that a lot of students just kind of repeated their evidence. So they just kind of resaid their evidence in a different way without actually explaining it. Let's take a look at this example. So a lot of people have evidence right now that looks something like this. This shows someone's emotions. Furthermore, pennies in a tin box shows that Rachel is feeling anxious. So this is missing the key word simile, and it also doesn't explain the quote at all. So it says, furthermore, pennies in a tin box. That's just repeating the quote. It's not explaining it. Let's look at how we could revise this. This simile compares the rattling of pennies to a person's conflicting emotions about how to act based on age. Furthermore, this shows that Rachel is feeling anxious because of the rattling inside me, right? So I'm mentioning specific words from the simile, from the quote, and explaining how that shows the emotion of anxiousness in this example. So here in the revised word version, I have the key words simile and my emotion of anxiousness. I referenced specific words in the quote. Lastly, you have your concluding statement. This is where you restate your topic, sentence, and argument. In terms of common errors in your concluding statement, since your concluding statement is kind of summing up your paragraph, if your evidence needed to be revised or your topic sentence needed to be revised, you're going to also have to revise your concluding statement, right? Because it's kind of like a chain reaction. These were the most common errors we saw. Some students restated their topic sentence word for word as their concluding statement. Some students did not mention simile or did not mention the emotion word in their concluding statement, similarly to the topic sentence. This is how you might revise it, right? So a lot of topic sentences right now look like, therefore, the reader knows Rachel is feeling anxious. This doesn't talk about the use of simile at all. A revised version would sound like, therefore, the simile demonstrates that Rachel is feeling anxious because she is not sure how to act. All right, folks, so that's it for this quick overview. Now you're going to take a look at your specific feedback.